Hello and welcome to Elvenhome after a gap of 2 months, which was not intended. The first two pieces that you're going to see here were recorded towards the end of November, and it was my firm intent that a video would go up in November. The modelling gods decided otherwise for one reason or another, and I'll explain a bit more of that at the end. But it's allowed me to do a number of things in the meantime and solve a couple of problems. So it's a bit of a bumper edition. But it brings you up to date with where I've got to on a number of important things to do, both with the underground layout and the next upgrade to Elvenhome itself. So without any more, let me take you to the bit of recording I did which plainly angered the modelling gods by my vainglory in managing a fairly minor repair. We'll have to see whether this works. I hope it will come out. I undertook a repair in the last week or so to this locomotive, which I thought was damaged beyond repair. About 8 months ago, this was running around the layout, and all of a sudden it stopped. I could hear the wheels at the back trying to push it, but it wasn't moving forward. And when I took it off, a piece of the motion had decided to come apart and was jarring into the ground, but the piece that had come away was here. Now this is the replacement, and it's a connecting rod that runs between the main wheel and then goes through a bar here and connects up here, and this goes backwards and forwards as the wheels are going round. And what had happened is that this piece here is connected to this rod by a plastic rivet. I think it's plastic. It didn't look like it's metal to me. And this is the opposite bar from the replacement set that I bought to enable me to effect the repair. And you can see that that's the piece that's here. And I might get my hands out of the light. That piece there is the one that sits on there, and that is screwed in tight, so this rotates on this pivot here. So if that comes away, you can't just glue it back on, because that's the point around which the bar rotates, because this is fixed and is just going round with the wheel essentially. So I went on to the Bachmann spares website and had a look what spares they had for Peppercorn A1, and this was about 8 months ago, and they didn't have the motion at all. There's very little for the A1s, so I thought, oh dear, well that is a great pity. I'll wait and see if a spares and repair comes up at some point, because the locomotive runs beautifully, and I put it to one side and didn't think too much about it. And then in the way that things do, a thought suddenly came to me when I was moving another locomotive. I wonder if the motion for this, the A1, is the same as for the A2. Now, well, not in real life, you understand, but in the way that Farish may have built the A2, and that they could probably get away with using similar components. So as I have an A2, I had a look, and it looked to me as though it was indeed the same part. So I went onto the Bachmann website, and the A2, they do have a full set of motion. If I bring this in, you can see the remainder, the bits that I haven't used. So I've got lots of spare motion for an A2. I'll move that out of the way so it doesn't get lost. And so I plumped up courage. It cost £12 plus £5 postage, and it came in. And the only thing I had to do to remove the old one was, if I come out from this side, there's a plastic piece here which had to be prized off, which locates into the middle of a bar that comes up from this side of the connecting rod, and screw that bit on there. So I did all that, popped in a decoder, and this does run really well, this locomotive. It just purred away. So I'm very pleased to say This I think only cost me about £70 on eBay about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe not as much as that, as long ago as that. They're now going for about 150. So I wasn't too keen on having to buy a new one just to replace that one bit of bar. But it is worthwhile, the point of this rambling. One, you can effect repairs yourself and they're not as difficult as you might think. And two, it's always worth looking at similar styles of locomotive in case the spare parts for that would fit for this. I suppose on reflection, I could have phoned Bachmann ages ago and said, look, this is the bit that's come off. Do you have a spare part? And they probably would have said, yes, you can use the A2 motion. But it is really worth having a look at what spares are available for which locomotives if you're in need of repairing. And it's really quite satisfying to see this chug around, and this will be on duty in the running session later in the video. Towards the end of the last video, I was saying that I really couldn't think what I wanted to do with what was a big grey space here. And a number of people suggested to me, what about a war memorial? And I thought, yes, I will do that. So I toddled off down to Harbin Hobbies to have a look at the Harbin miniatures that they do. And they had two different types of war memorial. So this is the one I've gone with, which is slightly smaller. The bigger one is up in front of the main station, and I'll take a picture of that and just put it up here because I rather like it in front of the main station, so there may be some change going ahead up there. But I wanted to do something else as well as to what it would stand on, and a thought also occurred to me that this newsagent's kiosk originally was intended to be up at High Elven, and indeed it was up at High Elven for quite a while. But when I finished that area off, I changed the area in which this used to sit, and it used to sit out of sight, which was really rather pointless. So I put it into that corner, but of course the moment I put it into that corner I realized that if it's dark there's no point to that at all. So I put a light inside. That's a fairly simple LED, 3-volt LED, which I put a resistor onto and wired into the 12-volt supply that supplies the whole of this board. So the whole board had to come off again and a bit more soldering, but that's all worked pretty well. And I rather like that. It gives a nice amount of light, and there is a little person in there you may just be able to see. It's easier to bend down and look than it is to get a camera in there. But the next thing I want to do now, this is sand, and it's the same technique that I used in the gasworks of putting sand down, and then in the gasworks I wanted to show where the coal was being delivered, so that got painted dark. But you put a load of sand on in the PVA and then hoover off the excess, let that dry thoroughly, paint it with more PVA, another layer of sand, let that dry thoroughly, and this has had well over a week, because the next thing I'm going to do is to put a colour on it just to bring it down from this lighter sand colour to something closer to the grey colour that you get for grit that's used in car parks. So I'm going to make up a wash of light grey and paint it over and hope it doesn't go horribly wrong. And then I think what I'll probably do after that is dry brush some white over the top of that, just to pick up a few highlights, I hope. And we'll see how that goes. This could all go horribly wrong, but we'll give it a go. So I'll go away and do that, and I'll show you this once I've finished. It's time for the update on where I got to with the design and what mode of operation of the underground layout, which I'll be starting work on in the new year. In the last video I'd mused on whether I might use something from block signalling, and Mark Island got in touch with me and said, have a look at Heathcote Electronics, because he'd used something from them which seemed to be doing what I wanted to do. And indeed it does. In fact, it goes a step further in that it also allows me to operate some signals, so that before the train pulls away from the platform, signals here will move from red to green, because on the underground it's only a two-aspect system on the deep level, certainly, and I think on most of the underground, not sure about the extremities of the Metropolitan line. They do use orange, which is for repeater signals, to show that the next signal ahead is showing a red aspect, but I don't need to worry about that on this layout, because you won't, there's no repeated signal to need a repeater, no other signal to need a repeater. So I'm going to be getting that unit, and the way the unit works is through infrared sensors under the track. Now this is the track plan on the 54-inch baseboard, which is what I'm moving to using, and all the curves on it I made bigger, which is why the baseboard has got a little longer, so that nothing on there is less than the equivalent of set track rate or code 80 radius 3. In fact, I think I'm using 12 inches as the smallest curve, and the outer one is 15, I think, if I remember rightly. So what I'll be doing is using their SA 1.1-S, and there will be sensors stationed at each of the points that you can see here to help control the train. And the lights will change from red to green. The train will move off. It will get round to D1, where it will start to slow, and it will stop at A. Have I got that right? No, I'm on the wrong platform. There we go round. Sorry, it will slow at A and stop at D1. And then it'll pause for a while, continue round and through, start to slow at D5 and stop at D4. Pause for a while, and then repeat the thing backwards and forwards and carry on for so long as the power is on, changing the signals as necessary. I can wire it so that I don't need two different infrared detectors. The same infrared detector will act both as A and as D5, and I've been sent the instructions by Clive Heathcote, who I got in touch with, and a very quick response, I may say. I sent him an email with a copy of the track plan marked up like this and said, have I got this right? And he came back within about 20 minutes, I think, saying, yep, absolutely fine. Here's the instructions for that you'll need, just to show you how you wire it all up. So the only other thing that leads me to need to do is to make the signals. Now I know that there are absolute aspects and it's CRS or CS signals, but all the signals they make, as far as I can see, are for above ground railways, and not unreasonably they have the shades and hoods around them. But if you've ever looked on the deep surface tube, their signals are really very small. They don't need light shades on them, and they really take up very little space indeed. So I got hold of some 1.8 LED lights, green and red, and I'm going to have to find some way of mounting them so that I can set them just inside the tunnel, which is where they appear to be in most cases for this layout. And that if I put this on now, these probably will look brighter than they really are, so that that's what you would be seeing most of the time, and then when the unit sets it, it will turn that off and turn that one on, and the train will depart. That's going to be quite entertaining, making something. If I bring this up, you'll see they're 1.8 millimeters diameter, and the distance between the two of them is less than that. So drilling the holes for that is going to be fun. But I'll have to have a think about how I do that. And my my dear wife also suggested that it would be a jolly good idea to install CCTV so that you can look along the platform and see the trains depart, which I'm going to do as well. So it's going to be you'll be able to get a good view of trains departing. I'm not sure how I'll actually relay that so you can see it in real time, but it will certainly mean there'll be I'll be able to take pictures of the trains going in and out, or the train, because it's only one of them. So that's been really quite helpful in assuring me that I'm going to run it as a DC layout, because I've only got one train. I really don't need to put it as a DCC layout, and that I can control everything I want from one unit. The only other thing to talk about is what I have in mind for above ground, and I'll just move a few things around and then very quickly tell you about that. When I was in Peterborough in October, I paid a visit to Trains for You, which I have to say, if you're in the Peterborough area, is a jolly good model railway shop. A little bit out the way, but plenty of parking near it. And among the many delights that was in Trains for You, I saw the Graham Farish low relief underground station. And here it is. Now it's a resin building, like many of the Farish Scenecraft things, which probably means it'll need some treatment on the inside to stop light bleed. But it'll be very difficult, or would be very difficult, I think, to build anything as good as this myself for the entrance to the underground station. So I'm going to use this and try and think about how I blend it into another building. But its real advantage, it seemed to me, was that the style, I don't know if I can bring this up so in the light and get the thing to focus on it. The style of the underground with the dotted lines above sort of fixes that in time, very around the sort of time the 38 stock was, certainly while the 38 stock was operating. I may need to change the posters. The underground map, well, it's not that clear even if you look at it under a magnifying glass, so I'm not too worried about that. And certainly when you've got it on the layout a distance away, it looks okay. It doesn't appear to me to have any obvious spurs that are brand new, and I think I will be able to blend that into another building, because there's plenty of places where the underground entrance is part of another building essentially, or a bigger one. I might think about changing it to the red colour. I'd have to think hard about that, but I might do that. But this does seem to me to be a useful thing for the entrance to the station, because the station is going to be somewhere in the City of London as a stub, which was put in to take workers to some financial institution or another, which is starting to give me ideas of the kinds of buildings that I may have around the entrance to the station. Because although I've got quite a big area, and I'll put up here a picture that I took of the layout, and I've marked on here roughly the same area, so you can see how much space I'll have to play with, which is quite a good deal, I have to say. But I've not yet fixed on what the road will look like, or which buildings will be there. But I can sort of begin to see in my mind, at least in low relief, or almost certainly low relief, a fairly grand Palladian style finance house of some description, of the kind that were very fashionable, certainly through the late Georgian and early Victorian period, before they got into Gothic horrors of buildings. So that's what's going through my mind at the moment. That brings you up to date with where I am on the underground layout. Still lots of thinking, but perhaps a bit more than just thinking early into the new year. I can at least, I think, get on in the new year and start ordering some of the electronic stuff and the baseboards themselves. And the upper level can certainly be started worked on before I actually get on to doing the layout below. Now let's go on and talk about next revision to the layout, which is going to be relatively major, not changing the track, but changing other things, which is my major bugbear, but I've really been far too nervous to go anywhere near. So let's go and have a look at that. It is time for me to face up to doing the thing that I've put off, despite the fact that it's the area that bugs me the most and is the thing that was the longest legacy of my inexperience when I first started building the layout, which is the control panel. I was very nervous of anything electrical. As you know, I've had to re-engineer parts or reverse engineer parts to get light into areas of the layout, because I was determined I wasn't going to have lights anywhere. And I was equally determined that I wanted as simple a control panel as possible, with using these switches, because I like the idea of the signal box look of them, you know, with the levers. And that it was all I could get my head around was to work out how these things were wired in using a CDU. And if you've seen from the beginning of the videos, I had a bit of a game working out how to get everything to work. So once I built this and it worked, I left it alone. But my inexperience shows in all sorts of ways. The absolute rat's nest that you can't really see under here of wires. But also that actually it's not very efficient in helping you operate the layout. Because although these are all numbered and they correspond with the numbers on the mimic diagram, I can't tell just by a quick look at the mimic diagram how any of these are set. And also, in my inexperience, when I wired these up, it didn't occur to me to wire them all up so that up means that the point has been moved away from the direct to turn off, and down means that, or whichever way it would be, but they're not all the same. So just looking at the position of these does not tell me how each of the points are set around the layout. And moreover, because I didn't fit PL13 switches to the Pico solenoid PL10 motors, I wasn't able, and I wouldn't have even begun to think that I could do, to have lights that show me the direction in which any set of points is set. Having decided upon this and built it and put everything in, I then gave myself a problem that it was really difficult to go back and put this right. I don't want to go to DCC operation of the points. The GaugeMaster Prodigy is very good for many things, but I think it's hopeless for controlling accessories. By the time you've got round to punching the point in that you want to change, the train has gone by, in my experience, and it's really very slow and not very helpful. So I've, partly because I didn't really want to have to fiddle with this, but mainly because I couldn't use the same switch to power the solenoid and change the power to a set of lights. Because as you all know, a solenoid motor needs only momentary pulses of electricity to energize one or other of the solenoids so that it magnetizes and takes the bar across. And then after that, the point itself holds that in position. But when I was looking on Heathcote Electronics' website, I came across a unit that they have which allows you to use the single point double throw switches. I mean, I think I could probably use these, but if I'm building a control panel, I think these will all go. But a single point double throw switch, center off, so it's a momentary pulse either on, up or down, and the unit detects that momentary pulse and then changes an LED. You would have obviously two LEDs to each switch from one color to another, and those are wired into the control panel. So it allows me to put right the inexperience that I had at the beginning. So what I'm going to do in the new year is gird myself and build a proper control panel and tidy all the rat's nest that's under here up by the change of the new control panel. Rather helpfully for me, I'll take an image of a moment so you can see what's underneath here. I should have taken this off really. When I built this, I used the male and female terminal strips. So the wires coming out from under this board, and there's a few that are not included in that, but the vast majority are, come out of the board into one set of terminal blocks, and a different set, which I think are the female ones, sit underneath, which take the wires then under the baseboard, where there's a whole raft of terminal blocks, and then these switches are wired into the other side to make the connection. So what that will allow me to do is to build the control panel using similar terminal blocks and plug them in to the existing points on here, just to see if I'm wiring everything correctly and if everything works as it should. And that's quite encouraging. So it means that if it isn't working, I can just plug these back in and everything will carry on working as it currently does. So that's a bit of a fallback for me. But I really do need to have a look at that. And I will also take the opportunity to think again whether I like this wall here or whether I might do something else. So that's the major change. The other thing that I think I will want to work on over the next few months, I went to the Paisley Model Railway show and I was really impressed with the level of detail that were on layouts. And although I've been putting some detail in, it wasn't nearly as much as was on other layouts. And I think that may be a thing that could really be done in many areas, just greatly increased, not just people, but things, to give it more life, really. And I think working on the graveyard in particular, and just how much difference that's made by just detailing it better. And there are areas around the layout that could do with more things in them. So that's, I think, the upgrades parts of Elvenhome while I'm working on the underground layout. But this is the big thing for me, which I will start work on probably in January. I'll get the electronics to start this in January, because I've got to just work out how much space I need to fit all the switches in, because I'm going to need, there are 25 points that are controlled from here. So that's 25 points, that's 50 LEDs, that's 50 holes in a piece of wood. So this is probably a bit thin, but if I can get it so that it slants down and covers this area, that might well be all possible. So there'll be a few trial and errors there, I think, to see how that goes on. And I'll take you with me through that process as I wire things in. And let's hope that it comes out as I want. Back in November, I promised to show you how this turned out. But it's taken a while, for various reasons, to get to record this bit, which I'm now recording on the 18th of December. It turned out, I was really pleased how it turned out. The light is quite tricky here. This is a nice lightish grey. It's gone away from the sand colour. The wash that I used worked really well. I did the 2 coats of sand and let them dry really thoroughly, and then it didn't take much of the wash to take the colour, and then I've gone over that with various powders just to take, so it's not a uniform colour all around. And I'm really pleased with how this has come out. And as I was saying earlier in the video, this is one area that I'll start detailing around here, and in particular up at High Elven, where I really want to go to town on the street in High Elven, just to see how much I can get in there before it starts looking too much. So that completes this part. That was the thing I promised to do, and you'll see that I still have the 2 peppercorn A1s running round. After I filmed that piece, which I mentioned briefly in the intro, after I filmed the piece about the minor repair that I'd completed to 147, I had a world of pain for about 4 or 5 days trying to get 147 to get itself round the layout, let alone pull anything. And for a reason that I just don't understand, it didn't occur to me to look underneath 147. I'd got a Great Central 153 out so that both would be running, and it was, as it is now, pulling those 8 Pullman coaches round without any trouble at all. The Gresleys rather, without any trouble at all. And I couldn't work out why 147, which had been quite a good engine, simply couldn't do anything, until I looked underneath and remembered that when 147 broke the coupling, I'd taken the set of tired wheels, which are there for traction, and put them into 153. And that's what stopped me completing the video, really, that I was trying to do the running session and I just couldn't do it. Well, that, and also that I then tried to put Flying Scotsman in place, and it then threw part of its motion onto the side, and the motor started playing up. So I spent the first part of December ordering spare parts from Farish so that I have 2 sets of tired wheels in each of the locos, the peppercorn A1s. They do come in the accessory pack, and although I had an accessory pack for Great Central, I didn't have an accessory pack for Northeastern, but that's been put right. The Flying Scotsman I was able to repair. Very luckily, the bit where the motion had come away, it had come away very cleanly. It hadn't sheared or anything, and it was where it fixes to the body. So I was able just to restore that. The motor had a new trans fabric motor put in it, and I also had a spare Zimo decoder, because when I bought Flying Scotsman it came with DCC fitted. So it now has active braking, and I will replace over the next year a good number of the other gauge master decoders that are in some of the Dapol locos, so that I've got active braking on things. So I've had a really interesting time getting to have trains running again. A bit scary at one point because I really thought that I'd had it with Flying Scotsman, but I haven't. So that now brings us to the end of what is a bit of a bumper edition of Elvenhome, because you've really got 2 months in one. Although the time spent by the delay has allowed me to get much further forward than I thought I could as on powering the underground layout, and also to discover a way in which I could solve my major bugbear of the control panel. So it really only remains now for me to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. I hope you have a great time. And of course, for the model railway enthusiasts among you, which I imagine is all those watching, that Santa is kind in what he leaves you. And also to wish you a happy new year. The next video, I hope to have something done for the end of January, but a lot will depend how quickly I obtain things and can actively start doing some of the work that I've been talking about in this video. But until then, Merry Christmas and bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.